Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back to the Dynasty Heat Seekers podcast and live stream. I'm your host, Rick Butts, here with Jason Abeld. Jabled, as we all know him. Follow him on Twitter, RotoHeat Jabled. How you doing today, buddy? Good. Very excited
Good.
to look back on the first 3 weeks of the NFL season and talk about a little bit of direction and which ways that you should go with your teams and how to determine that, because obviously not all 3-0s are created equal, not all 0-3s are created equal. So you've got different situations where you'll be in those situations, and you want to make sure not to overreact, whether you're on either side of that, depending on a number of things that we'll get into today. But first off, like your main league, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm 1-2, the one that I really care about, it's an Empire League. So, I mean, I lost a close one the first week, and I mean, I easily could have won that one. I feel like there was actually a stat change on that one on the first week, so I ended up losing by like a couple decimals. So that was kind of a bummer, but I feel like I'm still in it to win it. So I'm gonna keep pushing forward, and it's only been 3 weeks, so plenty of time.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. You're in a lot better position when you're 1-2 than when you're 0-3. And while it doesn't sound like a big
Yeah.
difference, it really is, especially, knowing, my leagues that I run, and that's like 14 of them. Some of them only have 12 weeks of regular season. Some of them this year actually only have 11 because of uh, the 12th uh, week being with buys and stuff. So there's weird schedules going on for some of our leagues this year. And hopefully teams coming down with COVID won't ruin that and really mess up the schedule. But, that's going to be our first news and notes of the day is the Titans, 3 players coming down with COVID and them shutting down their facilities until at least Saturday. And then the Vikings have had to follow suit, seeing as how they played them last week. And now we don't know what's going to happen yet with their upcoming games, and if they're going to move their bye weeks to this week and shuffle some stuff around, or what's going to happen. But what do you anticipate seeing them do here with the Titans and Vikings here in week 4?
Yeah, I saw early reports that they're gonna push it maybe to Monday, or you never know they might just take their bye week away or whatever they're gonna decide. But with the Titans, I read a report as well that they knew that a guy was on COVID, and he had COVID, and then all of a sudden 3 other guys get it, and their staff gets it as well. So I mean, they came into town in Minnesota and played their game, and I think it's really unfortunate for the Vikes too, because they had to deal with that, and they had to shut down their facility as well. So it's kind of a bummer, but I think it's gonna be okay, and we're gonna have to just see how it plays out.
Well, we definitely seen in baseball where they're not going to just shut down the league because a team has
Right.
a COVID outbreak. I mean, the Cardinals and the I was about to say Dolphins, but the Marlins both had to play a bunch of double
Marlins.
headers and to work up to get enough games in so they could make the playoffs. And I think they'll figure out a way to make sure this gets done here in the NFL as well. Going to the next piece of news and notes, Tariq Cohen has an ACL tear, and that's not the only news for the Bears, and everybody that watches this show regularly knows that I'm a Bears fan. So Nick Foles finally replaces Trubisky, and thank the Lord above, it finally happened. I think Nagy has wanted this to happen for a long time and was pressured by management and whatnot to, keep rolling Trubisky out there to see if he took a leap forward, and it was a no, a drastic no. He had a good fourth quarter against the Lions, and then, first and second quarter uh, in week two, and then was just garbage everything else, and just Foles comes in and does what he does. He's got ice in his veins, and takes the Bears to a win and solidifies that it's his job now to lose. And hopefully he doesn't lose it, because I don't want to go back to Trubisky. For anybody that watched the Bears this year, you could just tell the difference on the passes thrown by Foles. Like, they had conviction. And while he is going to throw some picks and whatnot, he's actually going to make some stuff happen for this offense, and that excites me. When it comes to Cohen, like, I don't think he was that important to the Bears offense. They hadn't been utilizing him a lot. Nagy's got this weird infatuation with Cordarrelle Patterson, and while Cohen could be a factor, he wasn't, and he hasn't been really since last year. 2 years ago, he was a great PPR asset to have in fantasy, but it just hasn't been that way from 2019 and then so far in 2020. So from a fantasy perspective, I think now you're fortunate you don't have to start this inconsistent, RB2, that may blow up a couple weeks, but the rest of the weeks is getting you 6 to 8 points, and that's just not what you want on your fantasy team. What are your thoughts on the Chicago Bears and all the happenings around there, Mr. Vikings fan?
Yeah, with Cohen, that's unfortunate, but I mean, this should be a rise of David Montgomery here. He's gonna see a lot of the pass catching as well. I mean, he should see a lot more work there, and I'm expecting that big time. Sky's the limit for him. The guy's, he works his butt off, and I like to see him. But Nick Foles, yeah, he's great. I mean, he throws the best ball on the team, and then Trubisky's always just scrambling around trying to make a play. But Nick Foles has the demeanor, and like I said, he throws the better ball, and he's just gonna make the plays on the field, and that's what we're gonna expect from here on out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. Not that Foles is great, but he's better for this offense. And if the offense can put up 21 points a game, close to it, they're going to win a lot of games, because the defense over the last 3 years has given up around 18 a game. So all you got to do is put up a few points, and you'll be all right. Over there in Las Vegas, the two stud rookie wide receivers, Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards, have concerning injuries, according to Gruden. Um, what are you doing here with the Raiders and their passing game? They're kind of like the Eagles, where they can't keep anybody healthy on the. That's their top three receivers they've lost to injury so far this year.
Yeah, I mean they've been they kind of show their cards to me. They're going to Darren Waller all the time, and they're feeding that guy, and then they got Jacobs in the backfield, and I think those are their two main playmakers. But to start the season, that those guys, the rookies, they go down with injuries or whatnot. But I mean, they're hard to start in the first place. You got to temper your expectations to begin with. But I mean, when they're on the field, they're making plays, and they're out there, and it's kind of a big bummer that they're not going to be out there. And for Ruggs, I mean, the guy has speed for days, and he can take the top off the defense. And they don't have that right now. That speed guy that can open up the field for all the guys underneath. So I think that's going to hurt them the most. But Renfro should step in and catch some passes, but. Yeah, it's a little suspect for me.
Yeah, it's real tough, because I'm not a Renfro fan, but now he's going to get targets. But right now he's getting downfield targets, and that's not really his style. If that continues, that's great, but I don't want to see the Renfro that catches 6 passes for 30 yards and catches it and falls down, because that's what he's been in his career. Wasn't like that in week 3. Had a little bit of a breakout there, but it's sad to me, because while we didn't really expect a lot out of Ruggs and Edwards early in their career, this is a great opportunity to get some experience and have quicker growth, right? So, um, they had all the opportunity in the world to produce and get looks and learn the pro game, and that's going to be halted a little bit because of these injuries that they've got at the beginning of the season. But yeah, you're right. Waller is just going to get peppered with targets like last year. We all expected, his volume to go down, but then all the wide receivers went down, and it's just going to be the same Darren Waller that you got last year. Eagles, Goddard, Rager, Djax, you know, these guys cannot stay healthy. Alshon's still out; he hasn't come back yet. I seen a tweet today that accused Zach Ertz of poisoning all the other receiving options in this offense to bolster his stats. But the first thing I'll say is Ward. Every opportunity that he's got, he stepped in and at least put up PPR points. Um, so that's nice to see that there's at least somebody there that you can plug in, and he's going to get a lot of targets with these guys out. But it's sad because Goddard was looking great. Rager was, looking good for 2 games into his career, and especially with the downfield stuff that Wentz has been really struggling with over the last 2 years because he has not done well long, and that's why Djax is struggling. Because he gets open, but Wentz just isn't producing very well. So it's very tough sledding for this Eagles offense in the passing game. What do you see happening here as this season progresses?
Yeah, I see them taking a big downfall, but because they just can't keep their guys healthy, and it's just unfortunate for Wentz because he doesn't have enough weapons around him to because they're pretty predictable at this point, with who they're going to go to. Obviously, it's Ertz, and then they got Sanders in the backfield, and yeah, Ward stepped in and played good, but I mean, who else do they have behind them? They got Jaw, who hasn't lived up to expectations, and then Djax, and then Alshon Jeffrey can't stay healthy, and that's just kind of the theme of their team. So I don't know. I'm really down on them right now, but I mean, they're still going to produce because they'll probably be down in games as well. So I mean, go after their superstars. If you can trade for them, then go for them. But I really would stay away, honestly, just because I just don't see a lot coming from them. Wentz has really struggled, and yeah, I'm staying away.
um, yeah, and we had this discussion today about JJ Arcega-Whiteside and how he hasn't done anything yet. His A dot so far in his career is like over 17 yards, and Wentz has been struggling every time he throws past like literally all his production comes from like 8 and under. So all
Mhm.
he's doing is dumping it off. That's where he's having his success. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott out of the backfield, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goddard. Their A dots are 5 to 8 yards. Greg Ward's is 6 to 8 yards, and he's not doing well on deep passes, which is something that we don't expect from Wentz. We expect Wentz to excel in that spot, and he just hasn't. And that's troubling for sure. Um, we had some breakouts from rookie wide receivers this week. Um, but as we've seen from weeks 1 and week 2, just because a rookie has a big week doesn't mean that it's being followed up by a big week. So I'll preface this conversation with that. But we had Justin Jefferson, your boy there in Minnesota, had a huge week with 7 catches, I believe 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Or was it 3 touchdowns? I don't remember. It was a lot. But it was like 38
Right?
PPR points or some shit. Um,
Yeah, today.
but yeah, that's a big day for your boy there in Minnesota. What'd you think about that?
Oh, I was excited. I mean, it was only a matter of time before they got the kid, involved in the game because, a lot of the expectations was that Irv Smith was going to step in and be, the wide receiver too, and I was kind of expecting that as well. But it's really been the Justin Jefferson show. But slow start. and he came out week 3 and just exploded. And I'm expecting a lot more of that, in coming up here, because he's only going to get better. And that's with a lot of these rookie receivers, and they're still learning. But you got Ayuk, who they're trying to get him the ball, and then you got Higgins. They were peppering him, so it's like, why not? Like, plug these guys in if they're going to be consistent. But like you said, you got to kind of temper expectations and kind of wait it out. But if you really are in need of a guy, then why not just plug him in?
Yeah, I could definitely see starting Justin Jefferson in leagues at this point because it is the Thielen and Justin Jefferson show in that passing game. And honestly, I've never been a huge Thielen fan, and other than that garbage time in Week 1, I think in Week 2 he had like a 6-yard touchdown or something, and kind of salvaged his fantasy day. But he has not dominated a game like Justin Jefferson just dominated in Week 3 in quite a while. So
Hmm.
I look forward to the Justin Jefferson. I did just trade one of my Justin Jefferson shares today, but I did get DeAndre Hopkins on the other end. It wasn't straight up, um, but then you talked about Ayuk and Higgins. Higgins with 2 touchdowns this week. 49ers starving for playmakers right now. There's a lot of teams. We've already talked about 3 that have just had tons of injuries, and they're another one. But these guys are going to be inconsistent. Ayuk and Higgins and a lot of the other rookies. I think Jefferson has a good shot to be one of the more consistent rookies. Um, but
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy first 3 weeks, and here we are with a bunch of injuries, some rookies starting to break out, and looking to find themselves in people's fantasy lineups going forward. Before we get into the meat, I just want to let you guys know you can drop those questions in the chat. We're not ignoring them, but we will get to them after the main segment of the show. So we appreciate you being with us and watching. So Jack, don't get discouraged over there. We will get to it. Um, so the main subject of today is, what do you do in certain situations with your team after 3 weeks, right? So it's not like the season's over after 3 weeks if you start 0-3, but you have to legitimately look at your roster and say, am I really an 0-3 team, or was I unfortunate? Can I rattle off 5, 6 games in a row? Yada yada yada, and then vice versa. I'm 3-0, but did I just happen to have a few of the best matchups to start the season? And could I lose 6, 7 in a row? And you got to really be honest with yourself in evaluating your squad. So I the first thing that's the biggest tip when anybody asks me, like, how can I be better at fantasy football, whether it's dynasty, DFS, redraft, whatever. It's be honest with yourself, right? Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're not making the moves to make your team better. And then there's the situation where you're in the middle and you don't know, am I a contender, am I not, do I go for it, do I wait back? And you want to make sure the one thing you don't do is stay in the middle, right? Because then you're getting middle draft picks. They're not as good. You're not making money on your buy-ins because you're finishing in the middle. At least if you don't get good draft picks and you finish at the top of the league, at least you get some money out of it. And then at least if you're losing, you're getting good picks out of it. Presumably the best players. Um, to give you a chance to improve that team faster. So we're gonna start off. I'm gonna let you pick like a situation um, that you might be in, and then we're gonna just hash through that of kind of how we're gonna approach that. So you just say teams so and so, and then we're gonna just kind of think of a roster that could be in that situation and what we might want to do in that situation.
Yeah, let's just start out with the most intriguing thing is, we're 0-3. Let's go with that. I think, like you said, the most important part of all of this is examine your roster, as well as examine the whole league's roster. I mean, it
Right.
it doesn't hurt to look at the other teams that you're losing to, and see what their team's built of and where they might go. If you can get a good idea of where you can end up or where they're going to end up, then that gives you more advantage.
Yeah, that is a great point for one. But there's a league that both of us are in where I'm in this situation where I'm 0-3. There's two 0-3 teams, so I'm in 11th place out of 12. But I've had the highest losing score each of the first 3 weeks. So I'm like the fifth highest scoring team, but I'm 0-3 and in 11th. So this is a situation where I've got to look and say, okay, I mean, it seems like I'm being unlucky so far, but I still got to look at my roster and look at the rest of the guys. There are teams that are scoring more than me. Do I stack up? What does my schedule look like? Do I face those, do I face three of those four teams the next, you know, 5 weeks and have possible losses there? Maybe I need to move some older pieces to those teams, because here's the other thing that people forget: when you are losing, if you have players that are making it more likely that you're going to win that are older, keeping them is actually bad for your team because you don't want to win. You want to get the best draft pick possible at that point. So when I look at my roster, I feel like I could beat anybody on any given week, but if I go even 50-50 the rest of the way, I'm going to be right in the middle, and it might be a disservice to my roster because in that one I do have some running backs that are a little bit older. Um, so that's that's the way I approach it, right? Because I don't think there's a clear cut answer for anybody that's in any situation of what you should do. It's how you approach that and figuring that out. So, do you have a situation in any league that is similar that you are trying to figure out? Okay, is my team better than it's done so far? Because, and this is the other thing I wanted to say. The reason why we're talking about this now is because if you wait until week 5 or 6 to start making these plans, if somebody else gets out ahead of you and moves, let's just say, like today, I bought DeAndre Hopkins. Anybody else that's looking for a wide receiver is now at a, they're at a disadvantage because I got out there ahead of everybody else and got the guy, right? So it just takes a guy off the market. So you really want to be the first, and it doesn't matter if you're buying or if you're selling, to set the market and take those opportunities off of your opponent's shelf. And that wasn't the league that I was 0-3 in, by the way. I just want to preface that. I didn't go buy Hopkins in a league where I'm 0-3, but I just wanted to point that out of why we're talking about it now. You don't have to act right away, but you got to start putting that plan together so that if week 4 goes bad, if you start 0-4, it's going to be real hard to make the playoffs in most leagues. So that's why I just wanted to preface that. So what situation do you have personally that you're kind of maybe struggling with?
Yeah, I'm 0-3 in a super flex league. I got Pat Mahomes, my main quarterback, and then I got Dwayne Haskins. I got Hunt as a running back, and then I got Tyreek as well. And then pretty much just filler guys, like a Cole Beasley, and I got a lot of rookies. But they got hit with the injury bug, like a Pittman and a Mims. They haven't started out well, so yeah, I'm 0-3 to start out, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. But the downside with this team is I've already traded my first and second pick to get these rookies, so I kind of went all in to rebuild my team. The team was a disaster when I took over, so to for this team I traded Cook in the off season to get Mahomes, and so I mean it's been a work in progress. So it's kind of been a building thing, and I probably, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have traded my first and my second round pick because it's probably going to be a 101, or it's going to be up there in the 101, 102, 103, and I'm going to want that pick back. So I'm I'm pretty upset about that. But I mean, like you said, I mean, you gotta figure out what you want to do. The longer you wait, the more downside it's gonna be, and it's gonna affect your team because you're not gonna be able to acquire, these picks or these players that you want because guys are gonna realize that, hey, this guy's team is no good, and I'm not gonna trade him this guy you know for whatever for these picks or it's just it's all got to get worked out. You got to go in and know what you're going to do within the first few weeks of the season, depending on if whether or not you're going to make the playoffs or if you're going to tank the season.
So I guess let's go through that situation that you're in, right? Because I feel like that's a
Yeah.
situation that other people are going to be in. We get trade happy sometimes, right? And we trade our first and seconds, and we look at our team on paper and we say, okay, we love it. But then we have injuries happen. It ends up falling back. The pick ends up more valuable than we anticipated it was going to be. This is one reason why I tell people if you're in our Facebook group, I've said it I don't know how many times, trying to gauge a first round pick, especially before a season starts for a future season, is one of the hardest things to do. You can try to gauge it all you want, but let's say right now you were looking at a team that there were teams out there that had two and I'm sure three of the Saquon, CMC, Michael Thomas, right? Because you could have got all those
Hmm.
guys in different drafts. And uh and you would have looked at them on paper and said, dude, that's a late first, right? And then we're 3 weeks in, and if you had those three guys, you're probably looking at a pick that could be, middle of the pack, if not worse, depending on how long CMC's out. We know Barkley's out the whole year. Michael Thomas might be back this week, but it, shit changes so fast in the NFL, and if you try to put a price on that or a placement on that pick too early, you can definitely miss. Um, but you mentioned Kareem Hunt, right? If you're 0-3, is should you really be keeping Kareem Hunt on a team that you're moving into a rebuild? And that would be the first question I would ask you. When I rebuild, running backs are the first to go and the last to get. Um, because you don't want to waste their value when you're losing because they could literally only have value for 3 years, and then you don't get to have the benefits of that when you could have got more young talent and or picks and got more young talent out of that. So is that one of the first things that's on your mind here when you look at that team at 0-3?
Yeah, I mean, I actually just got a trade today for Kareem Hunt, and it was a low ball offer in my opinion. It was like three
Oh
thirds,
yeah, that
and I forget who the player was. I was like, no
if
way.
you ever send me
It's
an
like,
offer with 3/3 in it, I'm
yeah,
gonna
it's like,
auto
don't even send
reject
that.
and say
Yeah.
sorry, but not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
for a premier player like that, yeah, it's like, but like you said, that's a very good point. For the running backs, those are the first ones to go. I mean, if you're tanking, and tanking is frowned upon about along, a lot of leagues frown upon tanking, but there's a proper way to tank if you're actually trying to do that. If you're trying to punt the season, then yeah, you want to trade your running backs, your starting guys that are going to be the ones that are scoring the points. And then maybe some of your other superstars, like if it's a super flex and your quarterbacks, maybe you want to move them. But yeah, I mean, you just gotta sometimes you gotta wait on players like Kareem Hunt. Like someone's gonna offer me something that I can't refuse, and I'm kind of waiting for that right now. So that's kind of my goal on that. Um, he's kind of my only running back, and yeah, I would move him if the price is right. I mean, if I could get, my pick back and, a huge package along with that, some other players that can help me in the future, then yeah, I'll do it for sure.
As much as I love Kareem Hunt, I don't think you're gonna get your potential 101 pack for Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
That ship may have
Yep.
sailed, especially in a super flex where people are gonna look and see Lawrence as a possibility, and that's really what you're paying for at that point is Lawrence, and we obviously seen what Joe Burrow's cost this offseason and what CEH cost this offseason. But
Sad but true. Yep.
sad but true. Yeah, I mean it's a tough situation to be in. You never want to be the guy that's selling, right? Because then you feel like, well, I'm just giving up this season. But when it comes to tanking, as you brought up, trading your talent's not an issue. Sitting your talent on your bench is the issue. We had something come up this week where some people were upset that somebody had CEH on their taxi. But all my leagues, you set your taxi before the season. You can promote to your active roster, but you can't demote people to taxi. So in that situation, that's not really breaking any rules. That's not doing anything shady. Um, that taxi's there and it's eligible for first and second year players. Um, but if you've got players on your active roster and you're sitting, you know, if you're sitting Zeke, then you're obviously an asshole. um,
Yeah, it's pretty obvious what you're trying to
right.
do. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so let's flip the script here, right? You're 3-0, and you're middle of the pack in scoring, right? What is going to determine whether some people feel like if I'm 3-0, 4-0, no matter what, I'm selling out and going for it. Other people say, well, I might be 3-0, but I also face the lowest scoring team of the league every 3 weeks. So um, who knows where I'd be if I had to face other people. Um, what is the first thing you're going to check in that situation when you're 3-0 and you're trying to plan out your next move?
I'm looking at rosters and seeing, the competition that I'm facing coming up in the coming weeks, and say, hey, can I win these weeks and then become, 6-0 and or whatever, 5-1. Obviously you want to get to the playoffs and win. But yeah, you gotta figure out what your team's really gonna do. It's hard to say because with all these injuries and you guys have shown potential and flash and scored points and like you said, you could have beaten some of the worst teams in the league, but you got some tough competition coming up. Then you got to really kind of figure out what your plan is, and then go from there. Don't just sell your first pick, and unless you're going to get something really good in return. That's usually the move that people look to do is to sell their first round pick, and then all of a sudden you can lose out the next few weeks, and you could want that pick back like I do.
Well, and that was a point that I was going to bring up with being in that situation and whether you should sell out to go for it, right? Like we all know, if you make the playoffs, you can win the damn thing. Um, we've seen it a million times where a team sneaks in, gets that, if your league has 12 teams and 6 make it, and then that 6th seed ends up winning the championship, and you're going, what the hell? The most important part about fantasy is that you're the one playing the best at the end of the year. Um, so I like what you said about checking the league. One thing that people don't do is check their upcoming schedule and those teams' rosters. So if you're 3-0, you should definitely be trying to make the playoffs, right? You shouldn't be selling guys off just because you face the worst 3 teams. Like over the next 3 weeks, and when buys kick in, you could end up still being 5-1, and basically be locked in to a playoff berth unless you lose out. And if you can do that, you should always do that. But that pick, like you said, right? You're 3-0, so people are projecting it as uh, a late first. But as we said, things can change real quick. So you end up trading it, you get late first value out of it, and then 4 weeks later, you're 500, and you're going, oh shit, I should have kept that pick. And somebody in our chat just said I was sixth last year and won the championship. So it's or even if you're like the best roster, last year I had a situation where I was one of the best rosters in my league. One mishap of not starting Drew Brees against the 49ers took me from winning the championship to being the 8th overall pick. And I traded my first rounder, so instead of, getting a Justin Jefferson, I was getting a Michael Pittman, you know, um,
Mm.
who I still like, but isn't Justin Jefferson. Um,
Or a CD Lamb
right.
there.
So
You could
it's
easily,
it's
yeah.
you know it's just that value that person got from me because I overestimated the value or underestimated the value of my pick. Really, ended up really being painful because I traded it for Tevin Coleman. Um, don't at me. But yeah, I think that's just what people don't do, right? They don't look at that schedule. They don't pay attention to other teams and their buys. Who do they have on bye when we face each other in 3 weeks, right? Okay,
Yep.
well they've got
Hmm.
this guy. I have a legit shot at winning this game now, even though they have a better squad than me. Um, you can plan that out, and it doesn't always work as you plan it out, but at least you're preparing yourself and being the best prepared to do justice to your roster no matter what, right? You want to make as many good moves for your roster dependent on the situation you're in no matter what. um, but as we said at the beginning of the show, not all 3 and O's, not all 0 and 3s are created equal. Sometimes you're going to be 0 and 3 just because, another guy on the Roto Heat team today said he scored the most points in his league, but he's 0 and 3. And that's just the beauty of fantasy football, right? Like,
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
sometimes
Yep.
it's just unlucky. Um,
Hmm.
and I've seen teams that were like second or third lowest scoring teams be 3-0, 4-0, and you're going, how, like, this ain't fair. But it happens.
Like nothing makes sense. Yeah.
And this year's been so much more
Yeah.
different than every other year because of all the injuries, the big injuries. We talked about 4 teams at the beginning of the show that are just riddled with injuries, and then just other teams where big stars have been injured, the Michael Thomases, CMCs, Saquon Barkley's, that completely alter an entire league, right? Like, you have one team that's stacked and they get 2, 3 injuries, and the next thing you know, they're not beating anybody, and teams that shouldn't be in contention are now in contention. You know, I've been fortunate. I had 1 Saquon Barkley share, 0 Michael Thomas shares, and 0 CMC shares in all my leagues. Which I'm fortunate this year. I'm not fortunate when they're playing and they're on the field, because you like to have those guys. But all
Right.
my teams inherently got better because of those injuries, which sounds like a shitty thing to say. It's just the truth, though. Um, and that's stuff that people don't pay attention to enough. Is how much weight does this pull? If the top 3 teams lost those 3 guys, that just levels out the league a lot, right? And then now anybody can win on any given week. Um, so it's just time to start preparing, time to start looking, see where you're at, where you think you're going to be at. And it doesn't matter what your record is, you should still be checking and being honest with yourself on what you got to do next. I want to thank everybody for being around. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you see when we go live every week. Tuesdays, Wednesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Um, Wednesday night is the redraft show. Obviously, tonight is the Dynasty, and then Sunday morning we go over that day's games and good matchups, talk start sits. Um, this is what I'm going to tell everybody in the chat. We're getting a lot of start sit questions, and with it being Tuesday, um, most of them I'm not more than 50% confident on when I answer them, but I am going to drop a link in the chat. I will answer them here, but you'll want to keep an eye and drop them over on our start sit video, and we will, as a team of like 20 guys, we'll vote on them, and then we'll put them in our start sit video that comes out on Friday. But we will answer these ones that you guys have had, but it might not be the final answer. So videos in the chat, I just dropped the link to that. Ask your questions on that video, and we will all vote on them to give you the best advice possible. later in the week. But right now, Jack says, "What's going on? Can you pick 2 out of 4 for my week 4 options? Are T.Y. Hilton, Marvin Jones, Jerry Jeudy, and Brandon Ayuk. Picking 2 of the 4.
I'll go with the veterans there.
I want to go with the veterans, but it's
I
not
know
working
it's
out that
kind of
way.
tough there. Yeah.
I'm gonna put
Right.
in Jerry Jeudy, right? Because he's getting the targets. It's him and Fant right now. He hasn't had that breakout day, but he's due for maybe not a Justin Jefferson breakout because not very many guys are going to go 7 for 175 and multiple touchdowns. But I like his volume. Um, and then I probably go T.Y. Hilton.
I like Hilton
So
for
I think
sure.
I go
As a lock
Hilton
for
and
me.
Judy.
I like that.
Um, Jack says Tyler Boyd or Devontae Parker as my flex.
Boyd for me.
If this is PPR, it's 100% Boyd. If I could see if it was a standard league, not PPR, I could see going Devontae Parker for the touchdown upside. But yeah, that's basically where I would be. I'd probably start Boyd in both. Um, I'll have to look more because I haven't even got into matchups and everything for this week and defensive team defenses. If I don't even know who Cincinnati plays, if they shut down slot wide receivers, then it may be a Devontae Parker thing. But Jack, we will answer that if you put it on that video I dropped in the chat. You can see it right here on our channel. Make sure you hit notifications so you see when it drops on Friday. But we will answer that, with a bunch of opinions rather than just mine or Jason's. Jack says, "What do you think of Cordarrelle Patterson?" I think Cordarrelle Patterson is a guy that should be returning kicks and staying out of the Chicago Bears backfield, not running routes. But I'm not the coach, and Nagy has a weird infatuation with him. He is a freak athlete, but I get sick of the cute shit that um, he keeps trying to do with Cordarrelle Patterson. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't even know. I'm so sick of the Cordarrelle Patterson experiment in Chicago. If I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, he's more of a gadget guy, and Nagy's been using him that way, and it just really isn't working out, honestly. And
I will say this, right?
it's like,
If he
why?
picks up an additional 5 to 6 carries a week because of Cohen's injury, and Cohen would get 4 to 6, um, then he might have value to start at wide receiver because a lot of places have him listed as a wide receiver. You can play him in a wide receiver spot. If he ends up getting 9 to 10, 12 carries a game and or touches a game with some receptions in there, then he's going to have value as a wide receiver. That's basically playing running back. So I will say that.
Do they use him on the goal line at all?
They try everything. Short yardage hasn't worked. Goal line hasn't
Yeah.
worked. It's an experiment that I'm just sick of seeing, to be completely honest with you. But the fact is that if he's getting those touches, it doesn't matter, right? Bad
Right.
players in bad situations that get a lot of touches can be valuable. We've seen it a number of times with guys that are not that talented but put up better fantasy production than some talented guys just because of the volume that they get. So that'll be interesting to see going forward with Chicago having Cohen out for sure.
Mhm.
Uh, okay, so Jack O'Donnell says Devontae Parker plays Seahawks. They give up the most points to wide receivers. Um, I will say that last Thursday we had the same thought process when they played Jacksonville, right? Um, Jacksonville was giving up like 8.5 yards per attempt, and that's just not what ended up beating them. I do think that Miami's gonna have to sling it this week, so Parker is definitely a guy that knowing that matchup more is a guy let me put some thought into this, Jack. If you ask that on there, I'll make sure that Brad gets it answered in the video. He asks how about Damian Harris? Sorry, I'm trying to find some better running backs off waivers. What are your thoughts on Damian Harris?
He's still on IR, isn't he? Until probably next week. He might be coming back here soon, but yeah, I mean, New England's been using Rex Burkhead, and he's been getting a lot of pass catches, and he had a huge week last week. So I think they're gonna keep using him for sure. So I think Damian Harris is on the back burner for sure. And then you got Sony Michelle who put up 100 yards last week for some known reason. I don't know. They keep giving him the ball,
For
but
some unknown reason.
I mean he's
Good. This leads up to
no,
a
I mean
good,
he's
good
talented,
little,
but
good little
yeah.
chat we're gonna have here.
I think yeah, no, I think Rex Burkhead's a better player, honestly. But yeah, I mean Sony's got the first round pedigree, so they're gonna keep feeding him. He's not a bad back by any means. I didn't mean that to say that he's terrible by any means, but he's not a pass catcher, and he's kind of like relies on the run, and that's all they use him for. So
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Jack, it does definitely depend on where you're at, what style, what team you've got, or what league type of league you've got, PPR standard. Um, the value on these guys. My thing is with Patriots running backs is that I try to stay away as much as possible, right? Rex Burkhead puts up 30 some points this week. Sonny Michelle puts up 20 some next week. James White, puts up 30
he'll be back.
in a couple weeks. And then Damian Harris ends up with, 19 touches in one game and then 3 the next. And, it's frustrating. But I understand if you're trying to get somebody off of waivers, trying to take shots, and it's always worth a shot, right? We've seen injuries, so if James White and okay, I don't want to name names, especially James White because his situation's unfortunate right now. If any two of the running backs go down, as much as they're going to run the ball, those other ones can have value, right? If it's Damian Harris and Michelle going, or if it's White and Burkhead, or any combination of those four, they're going to be able to have some value in that offense, especially if they continue to improve and have more touchdown upside. Um, okay. Do we have any last minute questions? If not, we'll get out of here. Have a short little Tuesday night conversation here. Um, we appreciate everybody coming through. We appreciate your questions. Remember, if you have start sit questions, you can ask those on our start sit video. I will also put that right now in the description of this video. You might have to refresh after I do it. But I'll drop it in the chat one more time too. Um, but yeah, that will definitely. If you ask them on there, they'll get answered. We dropped that video on Friday.
You also get a lot of fast answers on our Facebook group and then our Discord as well. So if you want, instant answers and a lot of feedback from a lot of people with great minds, then join these groups.
Do I trade Mike Evans? I have DeAndre Hopkins and Diggs as my other wide receivers. Listen, this is the first thing. This is how I answered this. If and anybody's tradable to me, right? It depends on what you get back that matters. You can trade, you know, right now Zeke is probably rated for the rest of this season the number one player by most people, and you can trade Zeke if you get the right combo back, right? You know, um, Mike Evans is probably going to be not inconsistent, but he's going to have his peaks and valleys, right? He may have a higher floor than he's had in seasons past because of Tom Brady, but his ceiling might be a little bit lower. Um, but we just saw him last week do something that nobody's ever done before with 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. Um, but you still have to get somebody of value back for him. So um, it looks like that's it for our questions for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that it helps. And if you have any questions, drop them on this video. Go down and comment. And, I go through and try to get to as many of these as possible. Go ahead, go over to Facebook, search Roto Heat, and get in there. Different groups in there. And we will talk to you next Tuesday. Jason, thanks for being here. We're out.
Later.
Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the rotoheat.com